They perfected appliances and mechanical inventions which reached far ahead of even our present attainments. In the field of electricity, they reached stages that our present race will not reach for 200 to 300 years. Along the line of occult attainment, the progress of Atlantis was far beyond the dreams of the average man of our race. And in fact, from this arose one of the causes of their downfall, for they would prostitute their power to base and selfish uses, and they practiced black magic. And so Atlantis began to decline. The end didn't come at once or suddenly. It was gradual. The continent and its surrounding islands sunk beneath the waves of the Atlantic Ocean, and the process took 10,000 years. The Romans and Greeks of our cycle had traditions regarding the sinking of the continent, but their knowledge referred only to the disappearance of the small remainder, the continent itself having disappeared thousands of years before their time. It is recorded that the Egyptian priests had traditions that the continent itself had disappeared around 9,000 years before the time of Egypt. Just as with the chosen ones of Lemuria, so it was with the elect ones of Atlantis who were taken away from their doomed lands prior to its destruction. These people left traces of their civilizations, and our science discovering these traces still wonder greatly at the evidence of high culture shown in them. So when the fifth race appeared, these brave and advanced souls became the teachers of the new race, and were afterwards remembered as gods and heroes. The Atlantean souls pressed forward for re-embodiment, and the fifth race evolved rapidly. Human forms were born to supply the demand, and the fertility of the new race was marked. Through cataclysm, the races of each cycle are wiped out when their time comes. But the few elect or chosen ones, that is, those who manifest the right to become torchbearers, are carried away to a favorable environment where they become as leaven to the mass, as gods to the new race that quickly appears. The chosen or elect ones were not the only ones saved from destruction. A few survivors were preserved, although driven away from their homes, and were reduced to the first principles of living in order to become the parents of the new race. The new races springing from the fittest of the survivors quickly formed sub-races, being composed of the better adapted souls who sought reincarnation, while the less fit sank into barbarism and showed evidence of decay. Remnants of these degraded human creatures persist in incarnation for thousands of years, being composed of the souls not sufficiently advanced to take part in the life of the new races. The early races of each cycle are more primitive folk than those who follow them. The soul of an earthbound person will reincarnate in a short period of time, and sometimes in a few days, while the soul of an advanced man may rest on the higher planes for centuries or even thousands of years, until Earth has reached a stage in which the appropriate environment may be afforded it. At the beginning of the fifth race, the present race of man, there were born not only the beginning of new sub-races which always spring into existence at the beginning of a new cycle, but there were also born the descendants of the elect, saved from the destruction of Atlantis by having been led away from the scene of danger. The new races were descendants of the scattered survivors of the Atlantean peoples, that is, of the common run of those peoples, but the elect were superior individuals of their race, and imparted to their descendants the knowledge and wisdom. By an understanding of this distinction, we are able to comprehend the fact that at the same time there existed hordes of people of the new race, more or less primitive and ignorant, and at other places advanced peoples like the ancient Egyptians, Chaldeans, Hindus, and Persians. The advanced people represent the advanced souls, the old souls, of the advanced individuals of the continents of Lemuria and Atlantis. The descendants of some of the higher individuals were afterward known as the Assyrians and the Babylonians. In due time there appeared the beginnings of the great Roman and Grecian peoples. Then came the fall of these ancient peoples and the rise of new subdivisions of the race. The race's history shows the existence and the manifestation of the law of the rise and fall of nations. Thus have risen and fallen the great nations of the past, and thus will rise and fall the great nations of the future. And this law holds equally true in the case of the great nations of the present. At the time of this writing, great things are underway in history. Cosmic forces are at work under the thin disguise of the petty plans and ambitions of rulers and statesmen. Looking backward over any period of the past, the careful historian is able to see clearly the rise and progress of the mighty movements which swept along in their current the affairs of great nations. And historians of the future will be able to discern precisely such great movements and forces when they look back to the history of today. In each case, it will become evident that the majority of the peoples involved in the struggles have had no clear perception of the great forces at work, or of the actual goal to which the great movements have tended. These nations have risen and fallen: the Egyptian, the Persian, the Chaldean, the Grecian, the Roman, and all the rest. Caesar, Charlemagne, Napoleon have just been puppets of fate, through and by means of which fate has worked out the dictates of destiny. Races now regarded as little more than half civilized will be the successors of the proud nations of today, just like the half-civilized Gauls, Angles, and Germanics succeeded the proud civilizations of ancient Greece and Rome. A nation declines because its more advanced souls have passed on, leaving the less progressive souls behind to carry on the work of the subrace. The advanced pass on to new scenes of activity, and the backward ones are not permitted to lag very far behind, for the continual change and the creation of new environments tend to reawaken sleeping energies and to stimulate the lagging ones to fresh endeavor. Halfway through the fourth round, the polar point of the 7-world period has passed.